Alright, the Boss IR-200 is one of my favorite pedals that I've owned recently. It is an amp and IR cabinet simulation pedal, which means for a simple guy like me, that means I can have a variety of tones to choose from in one pedal, from clean to low gain overdrive to high gain distortion, amp kind of sounds. And also the IRs can also really shape the specific, those little nuances that we can achieve with choosing the different kinds of IRs to shape our tone. On top of that, it has a built-in reverb and also an EQ. So apart from the EQ within the amp effect, there's also an EQ block, a parametric or a graphic EQ, which is very useful to shape your tone. So it's like 3 effects in one: amp simulation, reverb, and EQ. So I really like the pedal, but there was one thing that really bothered me at the beginning when I was playing around with the pedal, and it is this. So I'm using an X high gain amp right now, which is actually a really good sounding high gain tone. Notice how I change to a different amp. So I'm using the MS3 to change the patches of the IR-200 via MIDI. So for example, I am currently in patch number 3. Patch number 3 is lit up in the MS3. So I'm sending a PC message to the Boss IR-200 to change the patches as I change the patches as well in the MS3. So that's a clean amp, and I think that's a natural amp in the IR-200. And this is a diamond amp, patch number 2. So notice there's that small gap. I'm not sure how many milliseconds that is. So as you change the patch, there's a small gap wherein there's like nothing in between the sounds as you're changing the patches. And I used it live, and it's not really noticeable, especially if the band is loud, everything is loud. It's not too noticeable, but sometimes it can bother me. It's not a desirable thing to have as you're switching to like a clean sound. Notice that there's a small gap there, and it kind of puts me off sometimes. So the solution that I thought of to go around this issue is, if I have a song that requires a switching from a clean to a distortion sound, I would just use a clean amp on the IR-200 and a distortion effect in the MS3. So for example, this one. So that's a seamless, no gap switching. So that's what I like. So from distortion to clean. No gaps in between, unlike the previous one. So I'm not changing the amp here in the IR-200. It's the same clean amp. I'm just adding distortion in front of it. So we had a gig last Saturday, and I used this pedal board again because this is kind of my live pedal board, because it's compact than the medium-sized one. So I use this pedal board usually when I'm playing live, and I can't help but wonder again, what's the deal with the gaps in between patches with the IR-200. So and I also noticed that in the videos in YouTube talking about the Boss IR-200, nobody seems to be addressing this issue, and I'm not sure why, or maybe it's just me. But I Googled it, and I also asked AI why there's a gap in the patch switching, because I own the Boss GT1, GT8, and the MS3, this one, MS3. Although the MS3 doesn't have amps, but the GT1 and GT8 does. There seems to be no gap when I switch to a patch in the GT8 and GT1. even if there's different amps. And when I read the response of the AI, it says there that the reason why there's a gap is the processing or the processor in the pedal has to work on changing the different amps, IR, the EQ settings, and the reverb settings, turn off from the previous patch and turns on all those different settings to the next patch. And I thought to myself, if the Boss GT1, which is an inferior model to the IR-200 for sure because it's an old one, doesn't have a problem switching amps, maybe it's the IR. So what I did here, I set these two patches here in this bank of the MS3 to switch to a patch in the IR-200, different amps, but the same IRs. And even if because there's two separate outputs, A and B in the IR-200, that you can have two different outputs, like an amplifier and monitor speakers, for example, left and right as well. You can set it up that way. Even if they have two different IRs, if the two patches that you're switching to have the same settings of those IRs, I found out that the gap has been eliminated. So that's what I have here in these two patches. So notice that in the IR-200, it changed from a natural to an X high gain, which is a distortion or high gain sounding amp. But the IR is still the same. It's a 1x12 natural with a dynamic 57 microphone setting. So it's the same IR but different amps, and it seems that at least what I've discovered is it's the IR that's taking up the processing power. And if you want a seamless transition from one sounding amp to another, like a clean to a distortion amp from the IR-200, and if you don't want any gaps in between those patches, I guess the solution is to just use the same IRs for both patches. So I don't have a problem using the same IRs because it sounds the same. It sounds good, and the clean amp as well. So I don't have a problem with that. If I wanted to use a different IR, maybe some other time or in a different patch, then I'll just plan my switching of the effects and the patches to make sure that whatever patch I'm switching to, they will have the same IR. So I can use different IRs that way. But as long as if I switch to one amp to another or one patch to another, I just make sure that the IRs are the same. So that's my recent discovery. I'm not sure if that's well known in the Boss IR community, or I'm just being ignorant, but surely I didn't learn that in the manual or in the website or in any YouTube video. So if any one of you has that same problem, I'm just sharing this, my findings. So I'm now able to switch a clean amp. So this gives me even more flexibility than I already have, because now I can switch to different IRs without any problem, as opposed to the other one. As opposed to that, there's like that tiny gap. Even if it's like really small, and it really makes a difference. So I am sticking to the same IRs when I switch to different patches. So that's it. That's my discovery. I just wanted to share it to you guys. I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section down below, and I'll see you in the next video.